Hi everyone, Queeveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the winter night sky very generally. So we'll come back a little bit so that we're a little bit closer to the sunset. And because we're going to be taking a general look at the night sky, we're going to ignore the planets and the moon. I've already mentioned where various planets and the moon are going to be this December, but if we take a look at other years, we can see here that although the planets are changing positions, as is the moon, the stars are barely changing position. They are changing position a little, as we can see, but barely. The reason the stars are changing position this subtle little bit is to do with leap years and the awkward length of our year. So for a given date, things will drift a little bit out of position, and then they'll be fixed again with the leap year. With the addition of the leap day, we get back on track. We're also going to disimprove the light pollution just a little bit. We're going to make it a little bit worse just to give a more realistic and general view of the sky. And we might as well make the moon a little bit smaller. The moon, of course, looks a little bit bigger to the naked eye than it really is, and of course the light of the moon around the moon makes it seem a bit bigger, so this makes the moon just a little bit smaller, a little bit less obtrusive. So taking a look at the very early evening sky, we're here at just 5:30, which is really before a lot of people would start stargazing. We've got the summer triangle, which of course is with us all summer. We've got the square of Pegasus over here. Of course, with the light of the moon and the light pollution, we're not quite seeing all of the square. If we move a little bit darker, that bottom corner star there, Alganib, it's a little bit tricky to see with this amount of light pollution, but we can see the other parts of the square of Pegasus and the way they tail along here into Andromeda and out towards Perseus. Cassiopeia is nice and clear. During the winter time, it'll be pretty close to the zenith. It's high up above the North Star, which makes it that little bit easier to see. We can turn around to the north and we can see the plough is under the North Star. And again, this is something that holds up through various years. If we go through various years, we'll see the darkness changing. We'll see a little bit of a wiggle as we go to and from leap years, but we're still seeing those same stars in those same positions every single year during this time. And because the night sky is starting so early for winter, even if taking a look at the sky here for December, if we move night by night towards January, we can still see the summer triangle at sunset, even if it is further over to the west. We can still see the square of Pegasus, now also a little bit to the southwest. Orion has come up in the early evening rather than closer to morning time, but because the nights are so long and dark during winter, if we push ahead here, we'll even come back a little bit closer to the start of December. If we push ahead just a little bit later, here comes Orion, and we'll get all of Orion and Sirius into the sky before 11 o'clock. This is at just 10:30. So we're still seeing these same constellations. We'll be able to see them earlier in the evening once we're through till January, but because the sky is, of course, getting darker as we come through December, seeing them in true darkness is still going to be achievable in December and in January, because the nights, although they're getting shorter, we're still moving around the sun and changing what stars are visible in the sky. While we're looking at the constellations here, because the constellations are going to stay the same every year we'll have the same constellations in the same places, even if the stars and planets change position. So it's even easier to see here with the pictures up that everything is going to stay the same and has been the same in terms of the positions of the stars and the constellations. It's only the planets and the moon that we really need to worry about. So here, the more visible constellations like Pegasus, Andromeda, like Orion, like Gemini, they're nice and clear. Even without the pictures in the sky, we can still see enough of the bright stars to map out those constellations. Even constellations that are a little fainter, like Auriga with this pentagon shape here, and Taurus, even though it's difficult to see most of the Hyades, it's tough to see the Pleiades here. We know that Taurus has to be here because it's right next to Orion, and as we get used to what constellations are near each other in the sky, for example up here, these two reasonably faint stars on their own are the constellation Aries. This is something that you can tell because it's next to Taurus, even though it's very hard to see the stars in Aries. And even though most of the stars in Pisces, at this level of light pollution, they're invisible. This whole part of the sky looks empty. But we know that Taurus, Aries, and Pisces are all in a row like that. So we know where the constellation has to be, where it must be, given the position of the other constellations that are around. Staying up all night long and looking at the sky for the entire night, it can be a tricky thing to do. It is a bit of a big ask. But if we take a look at the morning sky, especially during the winter, getting up to see the sky while it's still dark in the morning is that little bit easier. We can ignore Mercury and Jupiter. Of course, the planets are going to keep changing, but we have Leo nice and high in the sky with that kind of a almost trapezoidal shape. And now that we've come around to morning time, we can see that it's the Plough that's up nice and high, and Cassiopeia is down low on the other side. So we can see that rotation of pretty much halfway around from one side of the sky to the other side of the sky, because it's been almost 12 hours, half of the 24-hour rotation that we go through. We can also see Arcturus here, the brightest star in Bootes, and we can almost see that kind of kite-like shape. And as I mentioned in many videos, especially at this time of year, we can follow the Plough's arc to Arcturus and then spike on to Spica and find Virgo early in the morning. This is another time when the gaps between the constellations, if you know the order of the constellations, you know that we're missing one. We're missing Cancer the Crab, which isn't visible at this level of light pollution, but it has to be there between Leo and Gemini. Of course, if you are going stargazing, it is well worth heading out to the countryside. Of course, it could be colder, especially if you do get a nice clear sky like this, but we can already see how much more is visible in the sky. With this much visible in the sky, some constellations can even be trickier to spot. We'll come back a little bit more into December there. So we can clearly see the summer triangle, even though those bright stars are now surrounded by so many other bright stars. As the sun is going down in particular, those will still be the first stars to come out. So in the countryside, starting your stargazing earlier can be even more useful because you're going to see more earlier in the night. And it makes some of the shapes a lot more obvious. The summer triangle, the square of Pegasus, the kind of fin shape of Perseus is very obvious here. The pentagon of Capella, or the pentagon of Auriga with the bright star Capella. And if we move just a little bit forward, we can see there's a lot more stars in the sky. So of course the summer triangle, those stars are still nice and bright, it's not too hard to see, whereas shapes like Perseus, they are getting a little bit trickier to see. Parts of Andromeda, even the square of Pegasus, there are some other bright stars around here that can be confusing. Now we can definitely see Taurus early in the evening once we're in the countryside. If we were back in the city, the combination of light pollution, the light from the sun, and how low the Hyades are in the sky, that makes them much more difficult to see. We can see Aldebaran, but we can't see the whole Hyades. Out in the countryside, it's a different thing. We can see the whole of the Hyades pretty much immediately as soon as it starts to get dark. And here we're looking at just 5:30, well, 20 to 6. There's still a glow of sunlight in the sky, but it's already dark enough to see those things. If we move ahead towards morning time, or at least towards midnight, we'll let the sky get a little bit darker and we'll let Orion come up nice and high in the sky. The bright star Sirius is always going to be visible, even Procyon, but seeing the stars associated with Canis Major here and the extra, although there's not much extra stars associated with Canis Minor, we can see by the lines of the constellations here, there's not much there, but we can see all of it. And we can also see the stars that are associated with Cancer, but with Cancer the Crab in particular, even if we get the moon out of the way, the shapes that we can see with some of these other constellations like Gemini and like Leo here, we don't get quite so much of an obvious shape from Cancer the Crab. And looking back the other way, Aries, the two stars that make up Aries, are now nice and bright, and we can just about see that kind of V shape that makes up the base of the constellation Pisces. But it's still very faint. Those stars can still be difficult to pick out, even with this level of darkness. Pushing all the way forward to morning time, we'll get a better view of Virgo and Bootes as well. We can see that with Bootes up here, we are getting sort of that shape, but with the extra stars in the sky, it's a little bit tougher to see. Corona Borealis is a lot more obvious now. That curved shape in the sky can be tricky to spot, especially if there's a lot of light pollution, but once we're into a darker sky it becomes very, very obvious, and even that kind of a trapezoid shape of Hercules there is a bit easier to see. But the arms of Hercules and the legs and the heads of the snake and everything that stretches out around Hercules, that's still a little bit tough to see even with this level of light pollution. We're getting the kind of diamondy shape there of Corvus the crow, much easier to see once we're in the countryside. It is quite low in the sky, which doesn't help, but it is just past Spica. If you followed the arc to Arcturus and spiked onto Spica, then Corvus would be just out the other side. So that's a nice sort of lesser known constellation to spot. Despite the fact that Spica is very obvious, the actual shape of Virgo is very, very abstract, so it can still be pretty difficult to spot. Once you have some familiarity with the zodiacal constellations that we see going around in this regular pattern, they can help you remember what constellations are supposed to be next to them. And this will give you an idea as well as to the kind of difficulties you'll face in the city where the bright stars are obvious, and the opposite in the countryside where there's so many stars that some of them might blend together and get more difficult to see. So I hope you get to see the sky. I hope you get to do some stargazing over the course of the winter. I hope you get to see the sky like this in particular. If you enjoyed this video, please do like it. If you like this kind of content, then please subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you'd like to read this information, you can head to my website, queevinscontent.ie. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you back here next time.